Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thursday Thoughts, where we bring you thought leaders, industry experts, and all around amazing people to talk about some great topics and give some insight. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Am I one of those amazing people that you were talking about?
I plead the fifth.
We're live. Be careful what you say.
I'll say yes, you are amazing as well, Kevin, but not quite as amazing as my friend who's going to join us today. Super excited to talk about franchising. I'll admit I don't know a ton about this topic, but my friend does. My friend, her name is Amanda Dempsey. Amanda is going to be joining us in just a second, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of detail about Amanda. She's super awesome. Amanda Dempsey, she is, and let me bring up some stats for you. Amanda Dempsey is a corporate attorney who concentrates her practice on franchise and distribution matters. She assists both franchisors and franchisees with all aspects of owning and operating franchise businesses, including the preparation of franchise disclosure documents and franchise agreements, protection of trademarks and other intellectual property and proprietary assets, federal and state regulatory compliance, brand development strategies, both domestic and internationally. She knows mergers, acquisitions, and other transfers involving franchise businesses, employment law issues, enforcement of franchise agreements, dispute resolution, and other franchise or franchisee litigation. So basically anything in the world of franchising, Amanda does it. Amanda served as judicial law clerk to the Honorable Robert P. Becker, Jr., Justice of the Supreme Court of New Jersey in both Gloucester and Cumberland counties. She also worked in the legal department of, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Amanda, you might have to correct me later, EQ's Capital Partners, Ltd. Limited, previously known as BPG Properties Limited, a private equity firm located in Philly. And as published in Philadelphia Magazine, Amanda was recognized as a Pennsylvania Super Lawyer Rising Star in both 2019 and in 2020. So super excited to bring Amanda with us here today. Amanda, how are you doing?
Hey, hi guys. I'm great. Thanks for having me. Great job on the bio. it's Equus if you wanted me to correct you,
Okay.
but yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about franchising today.
No, that's super awesome, super awesome. And for the folks listening and watching, please feel free to give us some questions or just leave comments if you just like the discussion we're having. You can do that right in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. We will try to answer any questions here with Amanda while we're live. And again, this is a fun chat. We're not going to go super long, 45 minutes to an hour, somewhere in that space, but we're going to cover a lot of topics and information. So pay attention, take notes, and we're going to hop right into it. I think the first thing we really wanted to dive into, Amanda, we were talking just in general, like, what is franchising? What does that mean? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So that's always where I like to start because I think some people, their idea of what franchising is maybe a little different from what it actually is. So, so I think a lot of people think about franchising and they think about, chain stores, right? Locations throughout the country, multiple location businesses. So franchising is really a method of distribution. So it's a method of distributing a product or service to a larger base of consumers. Mm-hmm. So you can have multiple locations and not be a franchise. It's just franchising is one method of doing that. Okay. So, and we can talk about the differences between what the franchise model is and company owned. So there's many stores out there, not just stores, restaurants, hotels, lodging, tons of different businesses that are what I like to call company owned locations. So you start off, you have a lawn care business, you want to own several lawn care businesses. So you open different locations under your same business, you hire employees, managers to operate those locations. And you're kind of, the owner operator of all of those locations. Franchising is really just another method of doing that with independent business owners. So if I have the same lawn care business and I would like to expand into a different market, I could find a franchisee who wants to be an independent franchise owner of my concept, and they're going to own their own business, their own lawn care business. They're going to use my system of operations, my name, my trademark, right?
Mm-hmm.
The system that I've developed and the method of doing business that I've developed, and they're going to operate their own. So if it's Amanda's Lawn Care Service, it's still going to be Amanda's Lawn Care Service, but I'm not going to own that business. The other owner is going to own it. They're going to follow my system and use my marks. They're going to pay me a fee so they can use that brand recognition, but it's going to be their own business. So that's the franchise model. Slightly different. Your big franchisors, everybody knows McDonald's, but the, other types of businesses that aren't franchises, like, for example, like Olive Garden, that's a company-owned system, just as, tons and tons of locations throughout the US and internationally, but they're not a franchise, they're a company-owned model. So that's where we start. There's a difference in the way it's operated and who the owner is, mm-hmm. and what the responsibility of the owner is.
Gotcha. So let's jump into this. So what really qualifies a business as a franchise? You have a couple different bullet points here.
That's a great question. So franchising is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. So the Federal Trade Commission is they're a federal agency, and they have a definition of franchise that is kind of that's where we start. There are there's other rules for what qualifies as a franchise in different states throughout the country, but we always kind of start with the federal rule. So we'll start there. So there's really only 3 elements that you need. So the first one is a trademark or associated branding that the franchisee is going to obtain when they open their business. So it does not need to be a federally registered trademark, although it can be. So it's basically the name and the marks that are associated with your business. So as I said before, Amanda's Lawn Care, that would be my mark. I may have a logo or other marks that go with it, but it could just be the name of the business that someone else would be using when they open their franchise. The second is a method of operation, right? So this is how I solicit clients. This is how I take orders. This is how I cut grass. Okay, so that's the method of operation, and I would be sharing that with my franchisees. So those the first 2. The third one is payment. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. It doesn't have to be recurring fees. It can be, in the hundreds of dollars, or it could be in the thousands of dollars. So it's really just those 3 elements that make you a franchise. And that sometimes surprises people. But if you're selling those 3 elements, if you're selling a method of operation and under a certain trademark to a franchisee and they're paying you for it, you've become a franchise.
Got you. And that second bullet there, the method of operation, it resonates with me because I'm right now preparing a talk about operations that we're going to have next month with Tywin Robinson. And, that's a big difference between successful businesses and not, even whether you're a franchise or not, is the operations and how you're managing the business flow. So I know that's very important, but I wasn't really knowledgeable that they sold that. I guess that's why you go to a Chick-fil-A or a restaurant and the food's the same no matter which one you go to. There's an operation in place.
Yeah, so I think that is actually what attracts most people to franchises is that, they may want to own a business, but they don't want to start something from scratch, or maybe they don't have the know-how to start something from scratch. So they're buying into a system that has a proven business model, mm-hmm. and methods and methods for operating those businesses in a way that has at least some type of proven success, right? So it's basically like kind of getting a leg up on owning a business. And it doesn't have to be super complex. I mean, sometimes it's just, just the way that somebody's doing something that's attractive to that franchisee. Like, hey, I love this concept. Show me how to do this, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, I have many clients that come to me and say, listen, I'm just I'm operating this business. I have this restaurant, or I have this home services business. And someone's approached me about franchising. Like, they want to do exactly what I'm doing in a different market. And so that's sometimes how franchisors get started, because they have someone approach them that says, like, I love what you're doing and I want to do it too. Please teach me. Right. So if you're going to be teaching someone that method of operation, they're going to use your branding and use your reputation, use your mark, and they're going to pay you for that. Then you've basically have become a franchisor.
Now, I think that kind of bleeds a little bit into this next topic that we discussed, which was the accidental franchisor, and our little guy looks really worried. What the heck is it?
Yeah, I love this graphic. It made me giggle. So yeah, this does tie in directly to what we're talking about. So, sometimes because there aren't, there's only a few elements that you need to meet, people wind up, franchising without really knowing they're franchising, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about what the regulations are on franchisors. There's certain things you need to do before you sell a franchise. You have certain legal obligations that you need to comply with. And so sometimes people find themselves in the situation where maybe somebody approached them to do what we just said, right? I want to teach me what you do. I want to know this. I want to open this business for myself. Let me use your branding and your operations method, and let me own one of these myself, right? So that person has become a franchisor without really even knowing it. And so we always are cautioning people when they are considering, a lot of times people will say, I want to partner with this person. Well, that's not really partnering with them if they're just paying you for this know-how, right? If they're not owning part of your business, they're not becoming your actual business partner. And you're just kind of giving them the ability to operate this business similarly. You're becoming a franchisor. And this sometimes pops up in what people like to call a licensing scheme. So we'll have people come to me and say, like, I just want to license this to someone. And we'll say, okay, well, are you just gonna let them use your trademark and do whatever they want with it, and they're gonna pay you a fee? And they'll say, well, no, they're gonna operate their business just like me. And so I say to them, okay, well, you're not actually licensing then, you're basically franchising, and we need to comply with all of the regulations that franchising requires. So that's the accidental franchisor. I've, had many people come to me that have either been tagged by a state agency for franchising without complying, or they come to me, contemplating this relationship, and I've had to tell them, like, okay, you're actually thinking about franchising, and we need to comply with all the franchise regs.
Right. And I always will kind of think, like, how do you do something that big accidentally? But it truly is. Someone can be infringing on these laws and not really know the details if they don't actually speak to a franchise lawyer or a lawyer who does not know franchise law.
That's right. I mean, it is kind of, so I always say that franchising is a large part of the GDP, but it's a small community. So there's not actually tons and tons of attorneys out there that do what we do. So just, your regular attorney off the street, may not kind of be familiar. So yeah, we definitely get a lot of clients, a lot of referrals of people that, have gone to, we get referrals from other attorneys that people say, I have this client, and I think they're franchising. So can you talk to them and help them? And we always say yes. So, sometimes we're able to undo it. If it's already kind of happened, we're able to help them kind of fix mistakes. And then, as it go forward, make sure they're complying. But yeah, that happens. It happens often. And so I always tell, people that are considering expansion, even if they might not want to franchise, talk to people that, know the different models, so that we can make sure that whatever model it is that you choose. And I represent non-franchise distributors as well. So I represent manufacturers and distributors of products that don't use the franchise model. They decide it's not going to work for them for whatever reason, or it's not best suited for what their goals are. A lot of those are like B2B businesses, right? So they just want to get product into a supplier's hands, and we work with them as well. But a lot of those types of relationships cross paths, and so we always just encourage people to just talk to your business advisors, whether it's an accountant, lawyer, business consultant, and just make sure you're buttoned up before you agree to anything.
Right. So let's jump into this: a franchise versus a multi-location business, and kind of how that delineation is made, I guess, from your perspective. And first, you have here the FTC rule. I think you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, so this is just the franchise industry is regulated by the FTC. Multi-location company-owned businesses, as we discussed earlier, they have their own regulations that you need to comply with. But if you're going to sell franchises, you do have to comply with the FTC franchise rule. So the way that this came about is, back in the 70s, the FTC kind of caught on that there were people out there that were saying like, yeah, sure, like, use my trademark, open your business. I have this really successful business. Look at all of the revenue that, I posted last year. Look at the profit that I made. Why don't you open one of these in your market? Pay me $30,000 and, open it and I'll help you. Right. And then they were kind of not really helping them. So they were taking their money and they might not have this method of operation really systemized.
Right.
And the FTC was seeing a lot of kind of like fraud related things happening and people contacting the FTC and saying like, this guy sold me the blue sky and I gave him my money and then he disappeared. So if you're going to franchise, the FTC published a rule and they basically require franchisors to provide a prospective franchisee, so someone who wants to buy a franchise, with a document that contains 23 items of information. And it's formulaic. So item 1 is about the franchisor, the parent company, who owns the franchise. Item 2 is about, who are the main operators, the president, the folks that are going to be working within the franchise. Item 3 is litigation, right? So there's 23 of these different items that the franchisor has to compile and provide to franchisees prior to selling a franchise. And it's informational. I always say it's kind of like a trumped up sales brochure. It's information about the franchisor that's provided to the franchisee. So a large part of my job every day is drafting these documents, and they're long. They're usually they're between like usually 150 to 300 pages long. And they include all of the information that the FTC requires be provided to a prospect. So before you do anything else, before you make any deals, you provide a franchisee with this document. Probably the most popular item is item 19, and that's the item for financial performance representations. And the rule, the FTC rule, prohibits franchisors from speaking about the financial performance of the franchise or the units if it's not in item 19, right? So I spend a lot of time crafting an item 19 that complies with the rules so that a franchisor can say, this is the financial history of the franchise. This is how our units have performed in the past or how we expect them to perform in the future. And a franchisee can rely on that information, which is reasonably based on the historical sales of the company.
Right.
So all of that needs to go into the FDD. There's other items as well. There's many things that need to go in the FDD. There's 23 buckets of information essentially. And that needs to be provided to prospects so that they can basically fully vet the opportunity before they decide to buy it.
Gotcha. Now I have a quick question because I know you had a couple other items on here, but I basically shudder at the thought of reading a 4-page contract. I assume as someone who's getting into this, you guys would provide that service too of helping me read this 300-page document and understand what the heck I'm looking at. Because I would quit being a franchisor as soon as I was presented with that document.
That is correct. So yes, another part of what I do as a franchise attorney is a prospect that's looking to buy into a certain system will come to me with that FDD in hand and will say, I don't know what this means,
Right.
Or I don't want to read all these pages, right? And so I will say to them, let me do it. I'm familiar with these documents. I know what's supposed to be in here. And then I also know industry standard, right? So I know what's an industry standard royalty rate, for example. I know what's an industry standard transfer fee, for example. I mean, I write these things for my clients and I also read them for people that are looking to buy into a concept. So what I'll do is I'll review that document. I'll provide a summary. And then I'll say, these are things that I think are not industry standard. These are things that I think are industry standard. These are important business terms that you should be aware of before you buy this opportunity. And it's not a substitute for reading it yourself. Certainly, I always encourage everybody to read every page because it's a big investment. But it kind of helps guide the reader a bit. So I provide those summaries to help guide the reader through and kind of like know what they're looking at.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So we also had on this slide was 14 registration states, notice filing states. and disclosure obligation. Well, give us a little bit about those.
Yeah, so in addition to the FTC, there are 14 states throughout the country that require prior registration of that FDD before you can sell in their state. So you have your FDD, you've compiled it, you want to send it to a prospect in Maryland, for example. Maryland says, no, sir. Take your document, register it with our division. They do an independent review of the document and make sure that they believe it is compliant with the FTC rule. They may send you a comment letter back and say, this item is not what it's supposed to be, make this change, right? So a large part of the work that we do here is working with those examiners in the 14 states that require registration to get that document compliant, and so that our clients can sell in those states. So there's 14. Pennsylvania is not one of them. New Jersey is not one of them. The closest are Maryland and New York are the closest ones to my location, but they're all over the U.S. The Dakotas, California, just some other examples. But yeah, so they do an independent review of that FDD that we discussed with the 23 items, and they make comments on it before that franchisor can sell to a resident of their state. And that needs to be renewed every year. So they're annual filings with a renewal obligation. So we do that for clients as well. And then notice filing states are somewhat different. It's just you have to notify the state that you're going to be selling franchises in that state. So they don't do a full review of the document. They just have like kind of a 1 or 2 page filing that says, we're a franchisor, we're going to sell to folks in your state, and they have to accept that and pay a fee annually. Sometimes it's a one-time fee. It's different in every state.
Right.
Which is what keeps me in business now.
Like, the fact that, you cross 10 miles into a different state and it's a totally different, set of rules you need to abide by. I guess it just is what it is, but I know that can get a bit much.
It can, for sure.
And disclosure obligation, what's that about?
So, and that just goes back a little bit to what we were talking about. So the obligation to provide a prospect with that document prior to them agreeing to purchase the franchise. And then there's also kind of rules around a waiting period. So how long the person has to be provided to review that document. So it's 14 days according to the FTC. So you provide the FDD to the prospect. They have at least 14 days to review it before they can sign a franchise agreement. And that disclosure period does change in some states. Some states it's like 10 business days. Some it's you have to provide it from the first personal meeting. So there's some disclosure requirements that vary state to state as well. But the FTC rule is 14 days. So you hand somebody the FDD, they have 14 days from that day to review it before they can sign anything. And that's just to protect the consumer, right? They want you to actually read it. They don't just want you to take it and dump it in the bin. Gotcha.
Quick heads up to anyone who's watching, whether it be on Facebook or YouTube. Again, leave us any questions or comments. We'll try to ask Amanda after we go through a little bit more info here. And of course, always follow Navitas. You see at the bottom. Follow us on Instagram or find us on LinkedIn. We love to talk to folks too, but don't call us about franchising. We're just going to send you to Amanda. Let's jump into this, Amanda. So if folks want to know if franchising is right for them, what are these different benchmarks or, sort of checkpoints that they need to sort of figure out?
Absolutely. So, and I will say this. So I'll just preface this by saying, I think these things are really important for kind of both sides of the coin, right? So if you're going to purchase an existing franchise and you're deciding, okay, is this the right opportunity for me as a franchisee? But this is also something that franchisors, people who are thinking about franchising their existing business, should think about. Okay. Wow. So if you have Amanda's Lawn Care Service and you want to become a franchisor, you want to expand your business through franchising, you should certainly ask yourself these questions. And the questions are similar if you're going to buy, right? So the first one is, does the concept have strong unit level economics? So, if I'm evaluating a franchise opportunity for a client, one of the things I look at is how much the initial investment is versus how much cash is coming out of that business in the first few years of operation, right? How long is it going to take me to get this investment back?
Right.
And what are the, so some franchisors don't provide a whole lot of information around that, and they're not required to. But one of the ways that you can evaluate the unit level economics of a franchise is to call existing franchisees. All of their information is in the FDD. It's required to be by the FTC. So if you're an existing franchisor, you have all of your franchisees' information. And if you, as franchisor, don't provide that information about the unit level economics of each franchise, a prospect can call franchisees and ask. And I fully recommend that they do, because they're going to be the real insight into, if there's hidden costs and expenses that we don't anticipate, and how strong the business model actually is.
Right.
And it's a large investment a lot of times, especially for like a brick and mortar concept. It can be a large investment. It can be, it's hundreds of thousands to sometimes millions of dollars, right? So, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to kind of recoup that investment within a reasonable amount of time. And that amount of time is going to vary between, the type of business that you're in. But that's number one. And if you're a franchisor, that's a good question as well, right? So is this concept going to be marketable? Well, the first question anyone's going to ask is that, right? So, is the unit level economics strong? Are they strong for this concept? And that's how you're going to attract franchisees. So
Right.
That's the first question. The other question I always have people ask is can this system be replicated, right? So, and one thing I always talk about is the key man problem. Good example of this is like a Cheers bar situation, right? Like there's a bar in your local downtown. It's packed every night. Well, pre-COVID was packed every night.
Right.
And everybody goes there, right? Does everyone go there because they love the bartender, they love the owner? Or does everyone go there because, they have great specials, the food's really good, they have great mixed drinks? Like, can this system be replicated, or does everyone just go there because of the charming guy behind the bar, right? Because that charming guy behind the bar is hard to replicate. The great menu and great drink specials and great drink offerings is easier to replicate, right? So, that's one thing that I always tell people to look at. Is the business successful because of the one guy that's there and he's really a hustler and he's really great at what he does, or is he successful because of the system that's built around him?
Right. Right.
So that's number two. Some other things to consider is, and these are a little bit more general, but does the business have a regional or local focus? So will the concept work outside of your region? So a lot of those are kind of like seasonal concepts. Ice cream store might not be as successful in Canada as it might be in Florida. It may be also, it just depends. It depends on the system, but there are some things like, outdoor type concepts that are a little harder in certain markets because of the weather.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other things too that may impact, something being successful in one market and another. Another thing that goes into this bucket is like certain regulated industries. So like med spas and other like laser hair removal. Like there's certain regulations in different states about where you can do that and where you can't. And those are state by state. So you need to make sure that can work across the country, right? And then the last one is just, is it novel, right? So is your concept new and exciting? That's not to say that another burger joint won't be successful. There's, many that are and continue to be, but what is it about your business that's new and exciting? And is it going to resonate with consumers across a large scale development?
Gotcha. Kind of quick little funny story. I know might be going back almost 10 years now. But my sister used to live in California, and she was like, there's no Rita's water ice in California. I'm going to join the franchise and make it happen, because why would they not eat it out here? And I'm just thinking, she never did it. But I'm wondering, like, were there regulations to have Rita's franchised out there? Like, was there a deeper reason? Because, like for example, Wawa used to not be down south, and now there's Wawas in Florida. Like, it's just a matter of time for certain franchises. Or could
I think so.
Regulations?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's any reason why Rita's would or would not be successful in California. I actually think they're there now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think part of it so National expansion, you know, you need to make sure you have the right operations people and development staff, because I mean, you're going to be partnering with people in a market that you don't know very well, right? So Rita's is located, their corporate office is, I think, in Trevose, so they're relatively local, or at least they were when they started out, and so they're, you know, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia concept, and I think just getting into California can be tough just if you don't have the right partners there, meaning like, you know, eligible franchisees that are willing to expand it and support it, because there's also, you know, supply chain logistics that you need to make sure you're getting your product out there, right, and buttoning up the product, because you don't want to be shipping water ice across the country, so you know, you're going to have somebody out there, you know, that's able to make it in stores, and that's how their model works now. They make it on location. So I think that's part of it. You know, I'm obviously not in in their development team, maybe someday, but I think that's probably part of it. And California is a tough state from a franchise regulatory perspective. So they are a registration state, as we discussed earlier, and they do have pretty strong regulations around franchising. So there's a lot of compliance obligations there that, you know, if you're not up for it as a franchisor, you got to get geared up for it. But your sister was probably, if it's 10 years ago, she was probably ahead of the curve and she probably should have bought it.
Right.
They're there now.
So let's say we got someone, you know, watching or going to watch this in the future, and they are ready to go. Like they're like, hey, I know I want to invest in a franchise. Maybe they even already know which one they want to get involved with. What are these items? Give us a little details about these items that they should have to when they know they're prepared. Like what do they need to know to go into it correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think this list is a good place to start for both people who are looking to buy a franchise, so buy into an existing concept and become a franchisee, but also folks that are looking to franchise their business. I think this list is a good place to start for both of those folks. So the first thing is build your team, right? So, you know, you're not going to be able to go into this alone. I mean, obviously, I recommend if you're going to be buying a franchise, to have your franchise disclosure document and franchise agreement reviewed by a lawyer who knows franchising well and can give you an honest assessment about the strength of the system and things that are potentially odd about the system, right? So we know the model well, and please let us help you, right? So there's things in there that you're not going to be familiar with because it's just not the industry in which you work, and it is the industry in which we work, right? So certainly let's build our team. Let's get our lawyer together. I also recommend an accountant that's familiar with franchising. There are many that specialize in franchise work, and especially from the franchisor angle, that's really important because there's certain like revenue recognition rules that you need to comply with as a franchisor. And so, you know, you really need your accountant to be familiar with those regs and to be positioning you correctly for growth. Sales team, I think, you know, in the beginning, it might not be as important, but you're going to want people there internally that know your concept well, are going to follow the disclosure regulations, and are going to sell your franchises to qualified franchisees. You need a sales team, and I think you know, that can be organic, right? That can be people that are already on your own team, employees, etc. But getting them really trained in franchise sales and the requirements around that process is really important. And then operations, I'll talk about in a minute, but then also marketing. I mean, marketing's so important in this day and age for franchisors. I mean, if you look at, you know, commercials, online marketing for franchises that currently exist, I mean, they have a common look and feel. Generally, the franchisor is going to be controlling that marketing from the top down. And that's not to say that local franchisees are not also going to be placing marketing, but it needs to have a unified message. And I mean, that's probably the most important. I mean, as they grow, marketing is so important. Franchise marketing is slightly different because, you know, as we discussed, you're going to have a general franchise brand, but then you also have things that are local to each franchisee's market. So
Right.
I remember talking to a client one time who had franchisees in Canada, and they don't necessarily celebrate all of the same holidays that we celebrate here in the US. And the franchisees up there were having a fit because they're being required to participate in promotional marketing campaigns that don't apply to them, right? So just having a marketing agency that's familiar with the different markets in which you work and is willing to kind of grow and expand with your team is really important.
Right. Right. And I know, Kevin, we've ran into this a handful of times, both that scenario and sometimes I come across this where there's multiple franchise owners that are in the same region. So they'll say, hey, I love this concept and I wouldn't mind spending money on XYZ, but if this guy doesn't get involved, then I'm spending money and I'm helping him grow his business and not mine. And that's frustrating because we end up finding folks that are gun ho, but they can't get the franchisee across the road to get on board. Do you find like tends to be like issues between franchise owners that are in a similar space, similar location?
Yeah, sometimes. And I'd say franchisors generally try to deal with that by creating, like, sometimes they'll create what they call like a regional cooperative. And what they do is like they kind of pool the resources of the franchisees that are in a certain market. So let's say we're in like Toronto or New York City, whatever, and we want to run a campaign. The franchisor would basically require those franchisees to all participate in the campaign and to contribute to its cost. And
Mm-hmm.
so franchise agreements generally have a provision in there that requires franchisees to participate in the co-op if a co-op is established. So you're not always going to have a co-op. Like if you're in, if you're the first franchisee in Idaho, for example, you may not be in a co-op right away, right? But if there's like 7 that spring up around you, you may, the franchisor may start a regional co-op for that particular region that's going to develop marketing for that specific kind of like core of franchisees. That's going to be, and I look at it as a positive, right? It's going to help them direct marketing in their region, right? That's appropriate for them, and it's not going to require them to use promotional campaigns that don't do anything for them, right? So, especially if you're in a unique market, or if you're like, let's say you're as I discussed earlier, you are a franchisee in Canada of a US based concept, like that is a regional co-op will benefit you because it's gonna target your market a little bit better. And so some franchisors deal with it in that way, but some of them don't set up co-ops, and they do certainly have that concern where, especially with so much marketing touching, like so much marketing now is online and social media, digital, obviously, and it's not like placing a direct mail, direct mailer or anything anymore. And so it does benefit other franchises if, this franchise down the road is doing like, I don't know, a radio commercial or a billboard ad or, a Facebook ad that is going to, touch folks in that market. So
Right.
it's ever changing for sure. And I think that, having good internal marketing people is certainly very helpful, but there's also many agencies out there that specialize in this work and specialize in franchising, franchise marketing specifically. So, as you grow, I think that's something people should definitely be putting on their list of their team members for sure.
Gotcha. So also on here we had the button up the systems, which we kind of went into that already. You really have to have your systems in place. But tell us a little bit about protecting your IP, your intellectual property, that is, right?
Yeah. So this is actually really, this is a first step that a lot of people don't do that I really recommend, from a legal perspective. So, we just going back to our earlier conversation where there's really kind of 3 parts to being a franchise. And one of them is your branding. It's your trademark, right? So as we, I started off talking about Amanda's Lawn Care. There's probably about, 5 million Amanda's Lawn Cares out there. So you need to distinguish your IP from others. And it doesn't just mean like creating a logo, it means protecting it as well. And so part of what I do as a franchise attorney and intellectual property attorney is that I, somebody with Amanda's Lawn Care came to me and said, I want a franchise, the very first thing I would do is see if there's other Amanda's Lawn Cares out there, right? Because if you want to become a national brand, you can't compete with, with other existing, well, you can, but it's not ideal to have to compete with other businesses that are using your exact same branding, right? So, and we get into this honestly with clients that are very well established. They may have, 30 units, they may have 10 units that are in a regional market, and they want to expand nationally, and there's other people out there that are using their same name or similar branding, so like a logo that looks similar. So one of the very first steps I take with clients when they're interested in franchising their business is to really get that IP buttoned up. So making sure their trademarks get registered with the USPTO, making sure their operations manuals, which kind of goes to the systemization part, but the manuals that they have created that basically explain their concept to their franchisees. And in like a restaurant concept, it's going to include your recipes, all that stuff. And so making sure that that's protected, right? So we're either copywriting that material or making sure that it's protected in the franchise agreement by explaining that it's proprietary. So just those kind of things. I mean, trade dress, like the way that the outside of your concept looks to the public, making sure that all of those things are adequately protected in either by registering them federally. It's a combination of federal registrations and then obviously your proprietary and confidential information, making sure that that's buttoned up by agreement.
Gotcha. So we're about to jump into sort of your forecast for franchising. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about that. But again, a quick reminder for anyone watching, please feel free to put any questions in the chat. Also, give us some comments if you just like the information that you're hearing. If you think me and Kevin are doing a great job learning from Amanda right now, just give us a thumbs up and make sure to like and share the video. But so let's jump into this, Amanda. You said you want to give us a little bit of a franchise industry forecast. So tell us what information you got.
Yeah, I mean, I like to end, any discussions about franchising with just some positive news. So, I mean, obviously this has been a rough year for everyone. And I mean, I'm no economist, I don't claim to be, but I will say that the franchise industry, it looks strong for 2021. And one of the reasons why franchising does really well in down economies is really because of the things that we discussed, right? Like there's support from the franchisor, and there's systems in place that really help it weather these storms, right? So, those systems help in kind of, in situations where things are in upheaval, because there's already a process in place for everything. And then the other thing is being part of a larger system. There's a lot of ideas, creativity about how to pivot, and pivoting is so important. We've seen a lot of restaurant concepts that had to pivot to, no indoor dining, takeout delivery, options only. Maybe we're increasing, drive-through, whatever. And so if you have the support and structure of a large system, it helps you make those choices, make them quickly, and then make them in an economic way. So having the support of a franchisor during that time is super important. And I think that, the franchise industry generally fared relatively well through this. I mean, certainly there was dips and interruptions and shutdowns, but I'm really just, I've seen so much creativity from my clients in how they deal with the changes that they have been forced to endure. And the other thing that I say is that down economies, I mean, entrepreneurs emerge in down economies. So whether it's because you're laid off or whether it's because, something else that you were doing is no longer working, people get creative when they have to. And franchising is all about that, right? It's about the next new creative concept and how that concept scales to a larger market. So we see tons of people coming to us with new ideas. Maybe they're laid off and they're going to take some money that they have saved or, retirement funds, whatever it is, and they're willing to launch that big idea that they've been sitting on for years because they they weren't willing to take a risk, and now they have to take a risk, right? So a lot of that happens during times of uncertainty, and the franchise industry really booms as a result. So I think the year is going to be great for franchising, and I've been really impressed by the creativity of my clients and other industry professionals that I know, and so I'm really I'm excited for it.
Awesome. Shout out to my friend and former Sixer John Salmons, who coined the phrase pivotpreneur.
Yeah.
I think that is a great term, and I spoke to him about that a few years ago, and clearly in 2020 I started using that term a lot because, like you said, folks had to really change the way that they operate their business, and when you have support in doing that, I think that does bode well for your success. So yeah, I see how that makes sense. I like the stability element of a franchise. One question that I had for you, and again, if anyone has questions, send them in. We'll get to this Q&A portion now. And it's just kind of like I guess it's a personal question. In your career in this space, have folks approached you, or does this happen often, that they try to get you involved in their franchise, like from the mindset of, hey, I don't have to pay a lawyer if a lawyer becomes my partner? And I'm sure you've heard of really enticing franchise opportunities. So like, do people approach you like that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so, because I work with business owners of all kinds, and they are generally aware that they're going to need a lawyer at some point, whether it's at the beginning or throughout, and so certainly people have, either wanted to partner with me or have me come on and work for them. And sure, I mean, I evaluate those opportunities. I mean, there are times when I'm like, listen, you can't really afford me now, but I'm willing to help you. Like, you're not really systemized enough yet to really have an in-house lawyer, but let me, let's work out a way to help.
Right.
And so I do have, creative billing arrangements with clients, so that we can get them the way that I view client relationships. And I know you do too, just from having, worked with you for a number of years and been your friend. I look at it as a kind of symbiotic relationship, right? So if they do well and I'm their lawyer, then I'm going to do well as well. And it's part of my goal to not just like churn hours and bill people at the end of the month and then just never talk to them again, right? So I do look at my clients as my partners in a way, like, but we don't work for the same entity. So I look at the relationship from that standpoint, right? Like, how I can help you out to the extent that I can. Please ask me questions, because it's better for you if you know and do things correctly in the beginning, rather than wind up in a litigation situation that's going to bankrupt your company, right? I don't want that for anybody. I don't want it for my clients. I don't want it for my friends. So that's how I approach it. But I can't work in-house for everybody. It won't work. Just, I mean, I can't be like a W-2 for 50 employees or 50 employers. So yeah, I mean, I do work on creative billing arrangements where I can for those folks, and just try to partner with them in that way.
Awesome. We are coming to the end of our time. Kevin, did you have any questions? I thought you were on mute this episode. You chimed in.
I did a lot of talking. I feel badly about that. Yeah, please.
Every time I had a question in mind, I waited 30 seconds. The next slide came up and you answered it.
Well, that's good. I feel good about that. At least it was like, there was some nice flow going on there.
It definitely was. I mean, the information was awesome. And, whether you're a franchisor or a franchisee or just a normal person that, keeps hearing about franchises and doesn't really get the difference. And, every time they walk into a restaurant or a store, they just assume it's a franchise. I mean, this was really good information to kind of understand the difference of that multi-location model versus an actual franchise. And then, of course, someone looking to get in, whichever side, that point of entry might be. I think this was great. The information was awesome. So great job, Amanda. Thank you for joining us. And you crushed it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I really, people don't when I tell them I'm in franchising, they're like, what? People don't know franchise lawyers are a thing. So, I do try to break it down as much as I can. But yeah, it's an interesting little area of law. I've been doing it really the majority of my career so far, and I really enjoy it. I mean, the best part of it for me, as this may have become apparent through my talk, but I just love working with people with really new and fresh ideas. I think it's really inspiring and it's motivating. So it just keeps my job really interesting. And then the other great part is just like getting to work with people that touch on businesses in other ways, like yourself. You work with franchise clients as well, and just being able to work with really great folks to kind of achieve the same goal.
Right.
Yeah, we've as an agent, as a marketing agency, we've been on both the franchisor and the franchisee side of things, and it's the difference between the two are they're two different mindsets for sure. But hearing everything you had to say, I think we've got the easy side of things.
Right. Now I'm going to be doing some personal investigations at this point, because me and my wife's favorite Mexican restaurant, El Limon, has multiple locations all around the area, and they don't promote. So like I knew of one, and then I found out of another, and then someone told me there's 3 more. And I'm
Zach,
like,
they're my client, and there's I think there are 12 locations now. So yeah, let's talk.
Okay.
They're great. Yeah. So they sold a few this year. They're awesome. They're awesome. And the food's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't go on Taco Tuesdays because too many people are ordering and it takes forever. But they are on point. Shout out to
they are. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have so many stories about them to tell you. They're great. They're definitely in expansion mode. So they are a franchise, to answer that first question, and they work with us. So yeah.
So
I'd love to tell you more about them.
What I'm hearing is a post-COVID dinner date, my family, your family at El Limon. I think
that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I would love that.
Family get in on that too.
Yeah. So one of the things we do with our firm, and we started doing through COVID, was like we do these kind of similar to what we're doing, but they're just like Zoom meetings with some clients, and we usually try to cater them. Like we deliver food to the folks that are going to be on the call with us from one of our clients' locations. And one of the first ones we did a Cinco de Mayo event with El Limon. Because and they catered, basically delivered food to the people that were on the call with us, and we did margaritas, and it was fun. So I have to invite you guys to one of those soon, because it's a great way. Like we kind of try to promote our clients and what they're doing, and then just have a great time with some of the partners that we work with.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, again, really appreciate you being here, Amanda. To folks that are watching, whether you're watching live now or you're going to be watching on YouTube or LinkedIn when we post the video, if you need to get in contact with us, you can do that at energy@navitasmarketing.com. You see it scrolling at the bottom. We do free consultations to talk about marketing initiatives with anyone and everyone. And if you want to get in contact with Amanda, tell folks how to reach you.
Yeah. So our website is kentfranchiselaw.com. My email is Amanda Dempsey at kentfranchiselaw.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook, Twitter. So we're kind of everywhere. But yeah, you can find us there. Our parent company, our parent law firm is Stevens & Lee, PC. So if you're in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, you may have heard of them. So we're also linked off of their website as well.
Awesome. And it's funny because we had some tie-ins from today's conversation with both of our upcoming thoughts. In 2 weeks, we have one of my mentors, the awesome Jen Groover, coming to chat with us about mastering your mind and mindset. We spoke a little bit about that with, franchises kind of making it through 2020. And then a month from now, we have Tyrone Robinson, who actually joined us in season 1. He's coming back now in season 2 to talk about operations for small business. So super excited to have both of those coming up. Make sure you check out the Navitas Marketing Events calendar. Just go to our website, search under events, and you will see both of these events to register for. So again, super excited to have you, Amanda. Thanks everyone who watched and who will watch in the future. And we'll see you in a couple weeks on the next Thursday Thoughts.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks,